secret lives can be the death of you.
A brutal killing.
She was just this lovable girl who had no enemies.
There was no reason for this.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
The dangers of internet dating, it's a game of Russian roulette.
Only her closest friends knew that she had this wild side.
There's plenty of crazy people out there that, she might have sent a picture to.
The truth will be revealed.
She fought for her life.
And that's a pretty violent way to kill somebody.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Staten Island's Willowbrook neighborhood. A world away from the hustle and bustle of New York.
It's basically like Smallville, USA. The neighborhood itself is made up of a lot of Orthodox Jewish families.
On a sunny Saturday, you'll see people walking to the synagogue. Safe, quiet area.
But when a mother comes home one night after work, she finds it far too quiet.
Eliza Posi came home around 7 p.m. that night. Something didn't appear to be right from the beginning.
The back door appeared to be open. She thought her daughter, Eliza, would still be at work.
The house appeared to be in disarray. There was papers thrown on the floor, drawers open, objects thrown all over the ground. The first thing she did is to call her daughter to see if Eliza was okay. There was no answer. She was, upset and worried. She goes to check her daughter's bedroom door. It's locked.
She panicked. She ran outside. She called 911 and waited for the police to come.
She felt that something bad happened, and then she didn't want to see that by herself.
NYPD Detective Michael Kenny is called to the scene.
When the police come in, they break down the door. Eliza Posi was found dead in her bedroom. She was 18 years old.
Once the police told Seema what had happened to Eliza, she just started shrieking, screaming, like people who didn't even know what was going on were coming out of the houses to see what was going on outside. She could not believe the daughter that she just left several hours earlier was now dead.
To capture the killer, Detective Kenny will need to piece together Eliza's final day on Earth.
The last 24 hours are critical to any investigation. It provides the information the investigator needs, such as who, what, where, when, and why. And that applies to every murder case as you're trying to solve it.
The first thing we do in trying to determine the time of death was speak to the last people that spoke to her. So our first interview, obviously, would be Seema, her mother. When Seema left around 10 a.m. in the morning to go to work, Eliza was still home. Eliza normally would have been going to work around 1 p.m. That particular day, she called in late. So she was going to work after 1 o'clock. Seema comes home around 7. So somewhere between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. is when Eliza was killed.
Through tears, her mother provides the details of Eliza's life. now cut tragically short.
Eliza and her mother were very close. This was her little girl who she was looking forward to, watching grow up and get married and have kids. She just graduated high school. She was taking off a year just to work and save up some money. She was just a very friendly, outgoing girl, liked by anybody who knew her. Eliza grew up in a very religious, Orthodox household. Her mother and father divorced about a year before the murder, and her father moved back to Israel.
Eliza's mother isn't the only family member interviewed at the scene.
Eliza had a half-brother, Raviv Gabe, and he was just getting married as the parents got divorced.
Raviv ran a kosher cookie business. I wanted to know what he did that day, where he was. Raviv told me that he was delivering cookies. He was out on Long Island around 1 p.m. Making a delivery. After he learned of his sister's death, he came to the house to console his mother. Raviv was with Seema, hugging her, consoling her, and asking me a lot of questions. How could somebody do this? We need to solve this case.
For Detective Kenny and his team, the first step is to examine the crime scene.
There's Eliza laying on the ground, naked. There was a pillow over her face, a towel underneath her, and a mattress that was pulled over part of her body.
Her hair was wet still, so they were theorizing that she would have just come out of the shower.
But it almost appeared that she was placed there. It looked like there was some bruising on the face. There wasn't a lot of trauma to the neck.
Suffocation is one of those types of murder that requires the victim to be overpowered by the assailant. It is not a death that is easily accomplished if the victim is able to fight and struggle, and therefore it can take a prolonged period of time, and there's an element of pain and suffering.
But this person overpowered Eliza pretty quickly, but you would think it would be a male, somebody bigger and stronger than she was.
She was in a state of undress, which automatically you have to entertain the possibility that there was sexual assault or sexual activity.
We fingerprinted all the areas that we could. We bagged the pillow that was over her face, the towel that was underneath Eliza. There was a spot or two of blood on the towel.
And they discovered some skin under her fingernails. Of course, they scraped that and sent that to the lab also to check for DNA.
When investigating a crime such as this, you want to throw a wide net and try to collect as much evidence and data as possible.
We knew that ultimately some DNA would be coming back from Eliza, whether the blood stain or the stuff under her fingernails. I felt early on that anybody I spoke to, I would take a DNA swab.
But processing this evidence takes time.
The CSI effect, as it's known, has altered the public's perception of how long things take. Crimes are not solved in 2 hours. It takes hours and hours of examining evidence and analyzing test results that come back.
Obviously, you're not going to stop an investigation and just wait till it comes back. This was a high-profile case, and the pressure to solve this case was strong.
Detectives work to uncover what brought the killer into the Parsis' home.
There was a few possibilities in how Eliza was killed. The first, obviously, being a burglary. Given that the house was in disarray, that was obviously our first angle.
After the police did a search, they determined that maybe a few dollars and some jewelry was missing.
If you're breaking into a house to steal spare change and the homeowner comes in, what the burglar is thinking is, I can try to run away, but I may not make it. And if I don't make it, then I'm going to jail for a long time. And so they make a split-second decision and they commit a murder.
In this particular case, it appeared that somebody entered through the rear door. The first thing you want to check is people's MOs. Is there a pattern? Is there a particular person that's going around, going through unlocked back doors?
Detectives canvass the neighborhood, looking for a lead. They discover a community in shock.
It's not a place where you get murders. But here you have a girl who everybody might have saw the day before, waving, saying hi. And now they find out that she's dead and possibly raped in her own bedroom. I mean, they just couldn't fathom it. This is something you see on the 6 o'clock news in another neighborhood, not in their backyard. It's also a neighborhood where neighbors look out for each other. If there's a stranger, people take notice.
Looking at the window from 1 p.m. to 7, the neighbors did identify this particular group of landscapers that were in that vicinity at the window where Eliza could have been killed. That would be the opportunity if there's a bunch of people cutting lawns. Nobody would take a second look if somebody was to walk down into the driveway, go in the back of the house, and try doors. There was 5 young men. We end up interviewing each one of them. All 5 of the landscapers, we took DNA swabs, and we took fingerprints. It was also helpful to get a reaction on somebody not wanting to be swabbed or being swabbed. Each one of them were very cooperative. My gut was that they weren't involved, that they were just landscapers doing their job.
They look to Eliza herself for more clues.
And looking at the body, it didn't appear like there was a substantial struggle. If somebody broke into your house and it was a stranger, there would be some screaming and yelling, maybe chasing, running around. If Eliza was familiar with the assailant, it might have been like, what are you doing here? And then an attack happened.
A key detail from the crime scene adds weight to this theory.
In cases in which the body is covered and the body is concealed, that suggests that the murderer has feelings of shame about what they've done.
They can't handle looking at the dead person, which leads the investigator to believe this killer knew the dead person.
Detectives turn to her brother Raviv to learn more about her relationships.
Raviv gave us some direction on whom we want to speak to regarding her personal life. Most of his conversation was directed at the ex-boyfriend. He insisted that we look at him, that he was a controlling, aggressive ex-boyfriend that had feelings for her that were still unresolved. Raviv felt strongly that this was the person who killed Eliza.
The troubled history between Eliza Posi and her former boyfriend Marique has caught the attention of the NYPD.
She had broken up with him a little while before, and he did not take it well. On surface, it's just a couple of teenagers breaking up. This was a little more intense. She was this Jewish Orthodox girl, and he was a Muslim, came from a Muslim family, so some people wondered if that's the reason why she broke up with him.
The families didn't really want them together in the first place.
He started to stalk her, follow her to work, follow her after work, seeing where she was, who she hung out with. He just wouldn't take a no from her. There was one time when he even broke in. She was sleeping, and she woke up to see him standing over her bed.
He was definitely somebody that we were looking at, a person of interest that we felt strongly that he might have been involved. We start going into some of his background. We came to understand that he had some sort of business connections with fake handbags. He was somewhat of a quasi-criminal. He wasn't an altar boy, so to speak.
Then, Marique shows up at the crime scene.
It's rare to have persons who I will call witnesses for now, waiting at the crime scene to volunteer information to the police. It's unusual.
I felt it was important to grab him, bring him back to the precinct, and basically get a timeline from him in the last 24 hours where he's been. His whereabouts for those 24 hours was, I was home, sleeping, and did this and that. He didn't have a concrete alibi, especially the window that we were looking at from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Detectives take Marique's DNA and look into his movements on the day of the murder.
Eliza lived in Staten Island, and Staten Island is separated from the rest of New York City by the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. A lot of New Yorkers have what they call an easy pass. They will have a time and date when somebody went over the bridge and paid the toll. So this is a very effective tool for police.
We ordered the Easy Pass records, we ordered his telephone records. We were waiting for them to come back, along with the DNA.
Marique's behavior takes a strange turn.
Marique showed up at the funeral.
It was quite the ruckus. In fact, I think Raviv had to be restrained from going after him. The mother was yelling and screaming. They had to forcibly remove the ex-boyfriend from the services. For the ex-boyfriend to go to the funeral, from my perspective, there's be a couple of reasons. Number one, he wanted to go to appear that he was grieving Eliza just like everybody else. He also might have wanted to go to see other people's reaction, what information he might be able to gather from the conversations at the service. Staying close to the investigation could be a reason to be there. He was a constant person of interest.
As the spotlight glares over Marique, Eliza's pathology exam reveals a key new detail.
It was determined that she was not raped, but it was determined that she recently had consensual sex with someone.
One of the angles that they're normally going to look at is talking to Eliza's friends to get an idea of the person that died. And in the conversation, they let us know there was this kind of secret life that Eliza was living.
Only her closest friends knew that she had this wild side to her, where she would go into clubs in the city, and sometimes she would meet somebody that night. And to the people on the block or her neighborhood, that was probably just as shocking, if not more, than the murder itself.
She had a very solid community of people that were the same as her. And, at 18 to say, you know what, let me go into the city, find somebody different, find somebody more fun. There's a certain maturity to think of that and want to explore outside your own little community.
But Eliza was doing more than frequenting clubs.
We found that Eliza was meeting people on the internet and having sexual encounters with the people that she met. Back then, there was no Instagram, there wasn't Facebook. The internet was still in a kind of an infancy stage. It was a bit of a oddity. Was it ill-advised to meet people on the internet? Yes.
The dangers of internet dating is it's a game of Russian roulette. You do not know what is going to happen to you if you get into a closed room with a person you've never met before.
There's plenty of crazy people out there that she might have sent a picture to, and that was enough to try and track her down. She might have said where she lives, and that was the extent of their exchange. And he might have come and killed her.
Detectives begin the daunting task of tracing Eliza's online activity.
When we actually see a murder that the theory is it was internet dating based, they're very difficult to solve because of the ability to hide behind a website, to hide behind an email address, to hide the address out of the country. It's very difficult to deal with and solve because you're dealing with fake identities all the time.
They manage to uncover a direct link to Eliza's timeline.
Police found out that Eliza was supposed to meet up with somebody that she had met online, and she had talked to him the night before her death, and that she had made plans to meet up with him in the near future.
The old adage is if you have a dead woman, you put her last 4 boyfriends in a room and one of them did it.
Is this internet encounter with this young man, maybe he wanted something more and she didn't want to give him it.
Detectives hunting Eliza Posi's killer have a new person of interest, a man she met online.
Nobody was calling us and say, by the way, I also met Eliza on the internet, and we were intimate. So we had to do our due diligence and find this young man.
Eliza's communication with him reveals another key detail.
The day before she was killed, he did meet with her after 10 o'clock when Seema left. They were sexually active.
What she would do is, her mother had a pretty set schedule, so she knew when she would leave and come back. She would have people come over to her house, and instead of coming in through the front, she would leave the back door open, and this way no one would see them.
I don't know if that was a daily thing, if he would have came back the next day at 10 o'clock. He would have been somebody that was familiar with the area, familiar with the place, familiar with when mom's not home. So he would definitely fit in the timeline of when she was killed.
In order to speak with him, they must first track him down.
We had some forensic detectives taking IP addresses and matching them with people.
They trace the young man to a home in Brooklyn. Police bring him in for questioning.
If you've communicated with a person on a computer, there's no way of hiding that. And there will never be a way for you to deny that. Full stop.
He was cooperative. He was forthright that he did know her, that he did meet her, that he'd been to the house, how it was coordinated. You know, he waited for her sometimes. If he was there too early, he would have to walk around the block. He knew the mother's car. He would have to wait to see to make sure that they didn't cross paths. He was very forthright regarding the relationship, that it was a secret relationship, that they met on the internet, that there was only a couple of encounters. When I told him that she was murdered, he was obviously upset. He was surprised. But he did say that he did not meet her on the day she was killed. All this stuff was information that he gave me freely, and he also freely gave me his DNA. We ordered the Easy Pass records. We ordered his telephone records. I didn't feel that he was a person of interest.
Investigators continue to scour Eliza's digital history.
For each person that we identified and she met on the internet, I would go through a timeline. And I would have them do the 24 hours, what they did, where they were, who they were with during that time, how they knew Eliza. And obviously I would take a DNA swab of each one of them. In interviewing each of the person that we identified, I didn't have a specific feeling that any one of them was a person of interest. They seemed to be people that were involved.
They were looking at these people, but no one was ruled out. Eliza's murder was not your typical homicide, but the detectives that work it, they were very dogged. That's the thing with homicide detectives. You know, they take it personal. It's almost like one of theirs, one of their family, and they work, you know, it seems like they work that much harder. When this one, they left no stone unturned, all while waiting for the DNA to come back.
As police quietly investigate Eliza's secret life, the press is making it public.
It went from a burglary to now here's a young, pretty girl who might have been caught up in some kind of sexual encounter, and you know that gets the press a little more interested.
It was an unfair dramatization of what what's going on. I personally felt bad about that. I did get phone calls from Seema, asking me, and she found that out from the news. It wasn't fun to tell the mother that she learned from the news that her daughter, who was 18, was sexually active with strangers. It wasn't a comfortable conversation. When Eliza was 18, my daughters were like 15, 16. Every once in a while, those things can creep in. You can say, oh, my daughter, is home alone at times. But you have to be able to separate your professional from your personal life. You see the things that people have done to another, and you try not to get hardened from it, but you have to look at it as a job. You're there to make a difference. You're there to get from A to Z, and you have to stay focused.
This focus leads to detectives uncovering her name on a police report.
This kind of secret life that Eliza was living, unbeknownst to her mother and her brother, had its consequences. She made a report that she was sexually assaulted.
She left the bar in Harlem and went to an apartment, and when she woke up, there were several naked men standing over her.
Could have one of these 4 or 5 assailants looked for retribution towards her for this assault? I didn't do anything, and you're causing trouble for me. I don't want to be arrested, and I'm going to now kill you.
A report claiming Eliza was sexually assaulted by multiple men gives Detective Kenny a new line of inquiry.
I think this kind of alternate lifestyle that she was at a young age of 18 had its consequences. And this was obviously something of interest for us as to what might have caused her demise.
But tracking them down will be an uphill battle.
Police investigated it, but they were not able to arrest anyone.
It wasn't like all of a sudden, this is it. We found out that she made a complaint that she was raped, and these are the people. There were so many different layers, so many aspects. But you always have to follow wherever investigation goes. You're not going to discount anything. Obviously, then I had to follow through with that and find out who she met and how she had contact with these people.
You as a police officer have to be aware of that at the time, that if there are other suspects, you must investigate them. It's part of your job. You can't be totally tunnel visioned on the one person and only that person. If these branches take you away, you have to investigate it.
As detectives search for the identities of the men who assaulted Eliza, the DNA results come back and open up an entirely new direction.
The first phone call I get from the medical examiner's office is that the DNA results ruled out any of the males that she met on the internet, the landscapers. It ruled out the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend. To my surprise, the DNA that is found on the towel was that of a relative, a male.
The only male relative they had was the half-brother. Raviv Gabe.
To me, it wasn't like, oh, we got the person. It was that, could have been the blood was left because he had a bloody nose the day before and they just didn't clean the towel.
DNA can be a very helpful investigative tool in that it may cause investigators to look at someone that they had not considered before, that they may want to investigate what their activity was the last 24 hours and how that related to the victim's activities.
Detectives work to understand how Raviv fits into the timeline of the homicide.
When I originally spoke to him and asked him where he was, what he was doing that day, he said he was out in Long Island making a delivery. We just started to break down where he said he was at what particular time. So we ordered his Easy Pass records. Once we get the records, we'd be able to get a photograph. As you go through the toll, he takes a picture. They're what they call robbery cameras. So anybody that comes onto the island, we can basically have a picture of who was in that car. He had a very unique delivery truck. We had photos of him coming over the Verrazano in around 1 o'clock. Now Raviv is a person of interest. Why would he say he was somewhere else at the window where she was apparently killed?
This gives them enough for a warrant to examine Raviv's cell phone records.
I carry my cell phone everywhere I go. If you go to my cell phone provider, you will find that the cell phone towers were going off in the area I'm telling you I was in. Depending on what you've got turned on your phone, you can be placed down within 2 or 3 yards of where you actually were at any given time. And unless it's a great coincidence that I just happened to be within 10 square yards of where the murder took place, and I had a motive and opportunity to do it, my cell phone is going to clear me.
When we got his cell site information puts him in Staten Island in and around 1 p.m. We knew exactly where Raviv was at any given time. 1:30, we have him in the area of the house. And then right on the corner around 2:10, so why would he lie?
Raviv's timeline gives him means and opportunity. Next comes the search for motive.
About a year or so before the murder, Raviv got married. And as a wedding gift, the family gave Raviv the business, delivering the cookies to the grocery stores.
The problem with it was that whether it was Raviv not knowing how to run it, being a young kid, just married, but the business wasn't doing well.
We found out that he was trying to keep his wife in the lifestyle that she was accustomed to. Our parents had a very nice house. They had more money than Raviv and his family, and that was a lot of pressure on him.
I've experienced several cases in my time where the suspect is a family member. This often happens when there's inheritance involved. So money is a great motivator. Money makes people kill too.
But Raviv's money trouble doesn't explain why Eliza would be targeted.
But Raviv did stay close with his sister. He still kept an eye on her, asked her what she was doing.
There was nothing that there was hostility or she owed him money or they grew up together hating each other. But you want to kind of let the facts take you to whatever place it takes you.
With Raviv looking guilty, detectives need to compare his DNA specifically to what was found at the scene.
The DNA that is found on the towel was that of a Raviv's. And the skin under her nails was in fact also Raviv's. There's nothing more solid than when somebody was assaulted and there's dead skin under somebody's nails. Why would a brother want to kill his sister for no reason? It doesn't make any sense.
Detective Michael Kenny is convinced Eliza's half-brother is the one who killed her. but concerns over a conviction still remain.
I have to go back at some point and tell the mother that your son killed your daughter, and she's gonna want to know why. The best way to know why is to get it from him. So I called Raviv and told him the ex-boyfriend had some other friends that we were looking into, and I don't know who they are. I asked him to come to the precinct and look at some photographs. So he's a little belligerent. He started giving out to me that why it's taking so long, that this case is going on for a month. We all know it's the ex-boyfriend. Why don't you arrest him already? So I have to play along, and I was apologetic. I'm trying my best, but I need your help. To my surprise, he does come in the next day, but he brings his wife. I have his wife sit in one room, and I bring him into an interview room.
Armed with a meticulously constructed timeline, Detective Kenny goes in to break apart Raviv's story.
I start again asking him about his whereabouts, where he was and when. So he starts answering the questions like normally. But then he starts like, why are you asking me? I thought I'm here to look at pictures. And he was starting to get a little more hostile.
They hit him with they knew that he was lying. They knew that he wasn't in Brooklyn at the time of the death. They knew that he was in Staten Island. And they kept pressuring him. Why'd you do this? And he wouldn't crack. He wouldn't say that he did it.
It's pretty common for people to deny even with that kind of evidence, just for self-preservation.
If the police have evidence that you've done it, and they've got the skills to interview you, they will make you crack in that interview room. Very few people who have committed a crime can withstand a successful police interview.
I just laid it all out for him, that we have your DNA, we know you did it, just tell us why you did it. He kept denying, I didn't do it, but I kind of threatened him. I told him, tell me what happened, or I will go out and tell your wife and the community that you raped your sister and that you and then killed her. Because I don't have any other information, and that's as good a story as any. At this point, he started crying. He told us what occurred. He tells me that the business wasn't doing very well. So in Raviv's mind, something that might have been worth a lot of money a couple of years ago as a wedding gift wasn't worth anything. So he felt that he was still owed a wedding gift. He came to find out that his mother came into some money from the sale of a house. He believed it was more than $25,000. So he felt that she was hoarding that money somewhere. So that's why he broke into the house.
She caught him in the act, wanted to know what's going on.
The confrontation happened in that hallway and then ended up in her room.
The timeline explains moment by moment the tragic events of Eliza's final day and how Raviv's lust for money led him to kill.
Mom leaves the house regularly around 10 a.m. every day, leaving Eliza home alone. Eliza calls her boss and lets her know that she's not going to be at work on time, that she's going to come in later.
Raviv made some deliveries in Brooklyn, and then he altered his route and headed to Staten Island. He went over the Verrazano Bridge, went to the apartment that he went to many times before, entered through the back door, which he knew was open at times.
He already had gone through the downstairs, and he was in the mother's bedroom looking for the money.
Eliza's just coming out of the shower with a towel on her, and he's going through drawers.
She could have grabbed the phone, I'm calling Mom or I'm calling the police, which would have escalated his anger.
She put up a valiant fight. It was all skin under her fingernails, like she fought for her life.
And then he took a pillow, put it over her face, took a mattress and covered her body and left.
After he killed her, he got back into his van, which was still filled with cookies, drove back over the Verrazano Bridge, and went into Brooklyn and finished his route. He did show up later in the day, and again appeared to be a very upset brother. But it turned out to be just an act.
Raviv never found anyone in the house because, unbeknownst to him, that money was spent. So there wasn't any money in the house to begin with. I never felt Raviv had any remorse. Sometimes you feel like somebody is telling you what happened as I've been holding this in for so long. It just comes out in kind of a release of guilt and stuff, but I never felt that Raviv had an ounce of guilt. If you define a sociopath as just some lacking regret, I think you'd probably say he's a sociopath.
Police charge Raviv Gabe with the murder of his sister.
I have to tell a mother that, yeah, we solved your daughter's murder, but it was your son who did it. So, it was difficult for me to do that. And, when I went to the house and I told her, she was hysterical. She spoke about her daughter and how beautiful she was and all the things that she had going for her in the future that was ahead of her. And how the son that she brought into this family ultimately killed her.
On May 2nd, 2006, Raviv pleads guilty to a reduced charge of first-degree manslaughter. He is sentenced to 18 years in prison.
1 year for every year that Eliza was alive. So he had to do the same amount of time in prison.
Seema then just started yelling uncontrollably in both English and Hebrew at her son, asking why, or how could he do such a thing? How could he commit such a crime? Here was a young, vibrant girl who had her whole life ahead of her. He ruined so many lives just for a couple of dollars and a piece of jewelry.
I personally felt for the mother. She lost both her kids in the same day. It just wasn't a happy ending.
It goes counter to the whole notion of family. It's a complete destruction of that trust that you have in one another.
She was beaten severely. She was beaten with a claw hammer, she was beaten with a baseball bat.
A brutal killing.
You hear of, crimes of passion. This goes beyond that.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
She knew where she was gonna be, at what time, when she'd be back.
When you start owing drug dealers money, people start getting desperate and start getting violent.
Somewhere in that weird web, we got a murderer. And now we just got to figure out who.
The truth will be revealed.
Somehow or another, somebody's got to answer for this.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Grovetown, Georgia, just outside Augusta. It's known as a safe place to raise a family.
Grovetown is starting to grow a little bit, kind of as Augusta's bedroom community. It's kind of a nice little pocket. Your average, middle class working families.
Everyone seems to know everyone. Everyone's friendly. You wouldn't really lock your doors.
But that sense of security can be dangerously misleading.
Emergency 911.
Yes, I'm over here at Cold Springs. The back door's broke in, and I had come over here to do some work, and I called the owner. I hollered at the end of the door, and I did no response.
All right, I'll get him on over there.
The patrol units that responded, when they arrive at the scene, within short order, they start seeing blood not too far inside, the back door.
My supervisor told me we had an assault and they needed me at the scene right away.
The victim is identified as 41-year-old Kay Parsons.
When I arrived, Kay was already on her way to the hospital. They didn't know if she was going to live or not. They've already got the scene taped off with crime scene tape.
Lead investigator Jimmy Edmonds and his partner Brian Jones begin investigating the grisly crime.
I could see the pool of blood where she was at. She was beaten severely. You can see there was a struggle that took place in the foyer that led into the living room. And then you could tell it went out into the garage. There was a bloody baseball bat next to her. And we also located a bloody claw hammer underneath her car. When you think of a hammer and a baseball bat being used, you start thinking of this is personal. It's not like a knife or a gunshot. This is a up close and personal beating.
When you talk about brutality, that's one thing. But this was overkill.
Their first task is to locate her next of kin.
I was able to get a number for David Parsons, her husband. I made contact with him. He was in Los Angeles, California on business. Obviously, he was very concerned about his wife. I had to explain it to him on the phone, which is very tough. He immediately got on an airplane and flew home. You could tell he was distraught. He told the doctor to take her off life support.
Their case is now a homicide. Investigators must reconstruct the last 24 hours of Kay's life to uncover who had reason to commit such a brutal murder.
You have to start trying to figure out where was she, what was she doing, who was she talking to? Did she have any problems with anybody? Did any arguments happen here recently?
She was, always friendly with everybody, but she pretty much lived for her son.
When you have a death, and especially kind of a whodunit right off, right from the get-go, then everybody becomes suspect.
You want to talk to the spouse. It's going to give you some good information to see if there's any problems or anybody has a motive to hurt her. Time's ticking, so, I've got to ask them some hard questions and find out about, their family life, are they having problems?
With the type of personal crime that this was, It could have easily been something. It could have been family related.
David says he last spoke to Kay at 6:45 p.m., the night before she was attacked, and had been unable to reach his wife by phone all morning.
He gave me no indication of any marital problems. He said, you know, they were in love, they were high school sweethearts.
Everything is just peach pie, just wonderful.
He'd been in California for a couple of days, so I knew it wasn't him that committed the crime. I asked him if Kay had any problems with anybody, if anybody he could think of that would possibly do this, and he said absolutely not.
You still have to figure out, you know, what the motivation is for Kay to be dead.
With so many unanswered questions, their hope rests in Kay's timeline.
You can't look at a body and go, okay, yeah, that 3:05 p.m. is when that, you know, it doesn't work that way. Basically, the frame of reference comes down to who's the last person that talked to him.
Kay Parsons was very predictable. She would get the kids off to school, then come back. She had her daily routine.
We learned Kay left and took her son to school. On the way to school, they stopped and got some fast food for breakfast. She then took him to the school, dropped him off. We were able to verify that through the principal and teachers that were outside. We found the fast food bag and the coffee cup on the floor. We could go back to that place to see, you know, to get a timeline of where she was at.
They learn that Kay purchased the food items at 6:55 a.m. This establishes a 2-hour window until she is discovered.
When you're working backwards from the death, okay, who found him?
A lot of people assumed that it was the contractor who was at the house that may have done this. What was he doing there? He just happened to stumble upon it.
Was that just a happenstance come by that day? Did he have a schedule to come by?
We interviewed Mr. Cozart to find out everything that took place.
What were you doing over there? What did you see when you got there? What were you supposed to be there to do? He said
he was supposed to come there and finish doing some work on the back door.
Cozart tells police he started the repair the previous afternoon and returned at 8:45 a.m. to finish the job.
When he arrived, he knocked on the door, didn't get an answer. He called several times, didn't get an answer. So he went to the backyard to look at the back door where he was doing his work at.
I just opened the gate and I walked in and I seen the glass all over the patio and I said, this don't look good. And I walked up and I hollered and said, hey, is anybody in there?
He got no response. That's when he dialed 911.
I said, something bad's happened over here.
He also claims, before arriving at Kay's house, he was on another job site.
So did he have enough time to do all that stuff and then stage it and then go and change and make sure all this stuff was right and then come back, oh, I happened to find this.
Investigators looked to confirm his whereabouts earlier that morning.
Mr. Cozart was very forthcoming, answered all our questions. He would, gave no indication he was trying to hide anything. We were able to clear him.
He was just there to do his job, and he happened to find this awful crime that had been committed.
But he does provide detectives with an important lead.
He said, but when he came back around front, he was calling 911.
Then I seen that boy sitting, the next door neighbor sitting down on a rock across the street. And that made me kind of suspicious right there.
Just sitting there. This person asked Mr. Cozart, he said, tell them my house has been broken into as well, which was the house right next door. I found it very interesting. So, of course, wanted to find out where he'd been and why he was there, or why he was across the street.
The young man is identified as Kay's neighbor, 22-year-old Michael Bowers. whose claim appears to be true.
So now that we've got that second house that's been broke into and signs of a burglary and blood on the back door jamb.
And that blood ended up being Kay's blood. So as an investigator, you got to sit back and think, well, if you are a criminal, a burglar, if you just break into somebody's house and beat this woman eventually to death, are you gonna leave and go break into the house next door and hang around to get caught? That doesn't make any sense. I had my suspicions about Michael and why he was there.
Detectives need to speak with Kay Parsons' neighbor, Michael, who they believe may know something about her shocking murder.
You got Michael sitting out there that all of a sudden is just there, kind of out of the blue, with this going on.
As police question Michael, his mother, Becky Sears, and her younger son, Christopher, turn up.
Becky was concerned about her friend Kay.
Looking for insight into how Michael may be involved, they examine the relationship between the two houses.
From the minute that David and Kay moved next door to Becky and her husband, they became immediate friends. They did everything together. Their sons played together. They had couples tennis, couples vacations. They were inseparable. You could see the close relationship that they had with one another, almost like sisters.
Becky tells police about the last time she saw Kay.
Becky and Kay, being friends like they were, they knew each other's routines like clockwork. Becky, she said she left that morning to take her kids to school. She told us that she saw Kay backing out of her driveway. She said she drove to the daycare, dropped her youngest child off, and then drove to the school and dropped her other children off, and then left from there and went to work.
Becky says she returned home as soon as she got the call from her son, Michael.
Michael was there at the time that the contractor found all of this, so he happened to be out front. Now we've got that time frame to work with.
Detectives need to uncover what Michael was up to.
As an investigator, I don't believe in coincidences. Certainly in homicide investigations, there's no such thing as coincidence. There's a reason why things happen.
We took him back to our office and conducted an interview with him to find out, what his story was. Michael had a troubled past. He'd been arrested a few times. He told us that he left the house that morning to go do a painting job with somebody. Come to find out there was no painting job he was going to do. He was lying about the whole thing.
If you lie about your whereabouts, they're going to check that. If you lie about your timeline, they're going to check that. If you lie about who you were with, they're going to verify that. They're going to check everything.
Caught in his lie, Michael offers up a new story.
He said he walked over to a friend's house and pretty much hung out there for a while until his mother left, and then he walked back home. Obviously, he didn't want to get in trouble with his mother because he told her he was going to do a painting job. He called his mother at work and told her that their house had been broken into, but didn't call 911.
Detectives look to place him inside Kay's house that morning.
The back door, the way it was shattered, there was tiny shards of glass everywhere. So I asked Michael to let me see the bottom of his shoes. And as I looked at the bottom of his shoes, I see a tiny shard of glass stuck in the bottom of the shoe. So I was like, well, was he in the house? We sent the glass off to the crime lab, and it came back that it was glass from the Kay's back door. His explanation was that once the handyman told him that the house had been broken into, he walked around back and looked inside. And he said that's how he got the glass in his shoe.
Michael's only hope lies in his alibi. He tells police his friend Anthony can vouch for him.
Anthony also had some problems with drugs. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, did Michael owe people money for drugs? You started getting in that drug world and you start owing people money, they start doing things to your house, to your family. People start getting desperate and start getting violent.
Police bring Anthony in for questioning.
He said that he'd come over in the morning. Told him I had an appointment at 9 o'clock. I guess that's why he decided to come by so damn early. But that's pretty damn early, dude. He lied to y'all and said that we were gonna go looking for work. Yep.
The friend's like, yeah, he was here all the way up until this point right here, and I had to go to work.
I'm telling you the truth, he was with me, and we were in that house. At 8:27, dude, you gotta go, I gotta go. Ultimately, if him being with me is exonerating him, I'm sorry, but it's the truth, dude. I'm not gonna stick up for Michael, but I'm not gonna lie on him either.
Michael, did he have enough time to get home, do this, stage it, clean up, and then be out front when the contractor happened to pull up?
Michael's departure from Anthony's house at 8:30 a.m. leaves a 15-minute window to walk the mile home and attack Kay before the contractor arrives at 8:45 a.m.
There's just not enough time for him to do all that stuff.
As a result, investigators return their focus to the crime scene.
We've got a house that's been broken into and signs of a burglary.
The master bedroom was ransacked. The only thing that we could determine that was taken was some jewelry. There was a lot of things that normally would be taken in a burglary that were still there.
This indicates that Kay potentially caught the intruder in the act.
At that point, you have the home invasion that turned deadly. Her best friend's house next door robbed, and nobody seems to know what is going on. Everyone just wanted to know who could have done this.
Police utilize a neighborhood canvass, hoping for a break.
We shut down the whole neighborhood. There was one way in and one way out, and we had patrol cars and deputies there stopping every car that came in and came out.
The longer you wait, then, memories go bad. It becomes incumbent upon us as investigators to go out there and knock on doors and ask, hey, when you were out there in the neighborhood the other day, did you see anything around this house, or did you see anything entering or leaving the neighborhood? What do we know about the people in the area around there that could have had contact with Kay?
We check our computers and everything to see, is there anybody around this area that is known for these types of crimes? Burglaries, break-ins, things of that nature.
One name stands out, Aaron Fisher.
We were able to determine that there was a person that lived in that neighborhood that I like to call him a frequent flyer, because we deal with him a lot. He had a troubled past. He had a history of thefts and break-ins.
Most burglars, they break into a residence, they steal whatever they can as quickly as possible, and then they get the hell out again.
But if you're breaking into a house and the homeowner walks into the kitchen, you've got a split-second decision on your hands. Am I gonna do a 10-year stint if this person calls 911, or am I gonna kill her?
A known criminal in Kay Parsons' neighborhood leads detectives in a new direction.
You gotta take every lead you can and follow up on every lead with a case like this. Because right now you have a whodunit.
Their suspect, Aaron Fisher, lives within sight of the Parsons home.
That person is definitely flagged, and they would examine the past records and see if that person has a propensity for committing escalating degrees of violence.
I knew that he had had some issues with drugs, issues with some theft and some violence. start by trying to nail down their time frames, nail down their alibis.
When questioned, Fisher tells police he was at home with his girlfriend until 10:30 a.m. that morning.
We talked to her. We were able to determine that he wasn't involved, that he had an alibi. He wasn't there at the time.
It's another dead end, meaning Kay's murderer is still at large.
And there was a lot of the neighbors over there that were fearful that, there was somebody out there that was doing this, and, we don't know who they are yet. And so now the whole, psycho killer out running around, that fever kind of goes out. They're scared. And particularly with a crime of this magnitude, they're double scared at that point that we don't know who he is, and he can come back and do that to me. The pressure's always there.
The fear is realized through shocking news regarding Kay's neighbor.
We got a phone call, said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" They said, "Becky Sears just got shot." I said, "Do what?"
There were so many twists and turns. Every time you seemed like you got a little more information and you had it figured out, boom, here comes another zinger, and it would just throw the entire story off course.
I went to the hospital, spoke with Becky at the hospital. She said she had went to work that night to do payroll because she hadn't been at work. She'd been at the hospital where Kay was.
Someone came out of the bushes, and I heard what I thought was a gunshot, and I fell. He said, he wants his money, or next time it would be my face.
Becky said she didn't know who this person was. She never saw him before in her life, and said she didn't know what he was talking about.
Becky is convinced her shooting is linked to the break-ins and Kay's murder.
Whoever killed Kay, for whatever reason, now had a motive to kill her.
It's not a coincidence. I mean, your house gets broken into, Kay's house gets broken into. She's dead, you get shot.
She was also thinking maybe it was a drug debt that Michael owed, or Michael owed somebody some money.
I think he's trying to stay away from all of that.
But something about Becky's story seems off.
I'm thinking, out of all the places that somebody's gonna come out and shoot somebody, unless you're just that bad a shot, you're not gonna get shot in the lower leg or in the foot. I mean, what purpose does that serve?
You get these feelings and you get these, intuitions, I guess you call them. You just know something's not right. You do this job long enough and you start dealing with people, and some things that just don't add up. You notice all these little details. You gotta have an answer for them.
All it did was just make Becky look suspicious. I mean, because the odds of that happening the way she said it happened, that was astronomical.
With suspicions growing around Becky, Detective Edmonds receives a tip.
I get a phone call from one of the jailers and says there's a gentleman over there that wants to speak with me. So I go over to the jail and I meet with Jerry Jacobs. I don't know who Jerry is, never talked to him in my life.
The first thing you want to look at with somebody, particularly if they're in custody at the time, is what are they charged with? And are they looking to try to make a deal? I'll give you some information if you do this for me, sort of a quid quo pro kind of thing.
He was there on a probation violation of a traffic ticket. So he wasn't in there for anything serious. Jerry proceeds to tell me that he is the brother of Becky Sears, who is the next door neighbor to Kay Parsons. He lived with Becky at her house for a little while, and eventually he moved out with his nephew, Christopher Bowers.
Jerry tells police his sister confided in him.
She came to me one day, or there in the parking lot crying, and I was like, what's wrong? And that's whenever she told me she was having an affair.
He goes on to tell me Becky and David Parsons, Kay's husband, having an affair. And that Kay found out about the affair. I was like, because David Parsons never told me about this. I had no knowledge of an affair until that point in time right there. That kind of blew my mind. So now I'm going, wait a minute. Now we got some It's a motive building here.
And you're putting these pieces of the puzzle together, and it's kind of starting to make sense now that, okay, this probably was a murder based on this love triangle. But was it Kay's husband that did it? Did Becky have something to do with it? Somewhere in that weird web, we got a murderer. And now we just got to figure out who, and we got to figure out how it happened.
Information provided by Becky's brother, Jerry Jacobs, introduces a shocking new motive in the death of Kay Parsons.
Jerry said she would call him up on the phone. She would break down. She would, be hysterical, crying. He would have to talk her down.
And she had asked me if I knew of anyone or if I knew a way that we could do this to kill Kay and make it look like an accident.
She wanted Kay out of the way. She wanted her dead so she could have David.
And then, I'd be like, well, Becky, that's okay. Sometimes we all feel that way about people. She's like, no. She's like, I really want her dead. She said, can we do this? And I'm like, no, we can't.
And I wanted to know why Jerry was coming forward. Why was he telling us about his sister? Jerry told me he was watching the news and he saw about what happened at Kay's house. He said, I couldn't live with myself. If I knew this and I knew they did it, he said, I couldn't live with myself.
I don't know if it was David, if he had something to do with it.
He knows some specifics about it or whatever. He's telling us stuff that, at this point we didn't know.
Detectives show Jerry photographs from the scene in the hope he can provide further insight.
It was like, all right, look, the hammer that was used, he had seen the hammer at Becky's house. He recognized the hammer as being one that Becky had.
It shows that it was definitely premeditated. You can grab a baseball bat, you can grab any sort of other implement to kill somebody, but when you bring a hammer with you as well, it shows that there was a certain degree of planning involved in the murder.
Police believe that if Becky is involved, she must have had help.
He told me, he said, I know who did it. I said, oh, please tell.
Because you're real easy to think it could be Michael, the wayward son.
But he told me, he said, I believe it's going to be Christopher and Becky.
I can just hear them right now scheming something together and thinking they can get away with it.
The accusation directs suspicion to Becky's oldest son.
Christopher, he'd tell me, he's like, Mama called me in the middle of the night last night crying, and, if she says if we could get away with it, it would sure make everything better on her because she loves David so much.
And then you start finding out about the relationship with her sons, how one was the black sheep, how one she doted on. Chris was Mama's boy. He was the golden child.
She was buying him motorcycles. She rented him a house. She bought him a truck. She didn't do any of those things for Michael. So it was a totally different relationship between those two. Christopher knew how upset she was about David, how she wanted to be with David, and she knew that Christopher would do anything for her.
Police returned to Kay's husband, David, to confront him with the affair allegations.
First thing I asked him is, tell me about the affair with Becky. Because I just wanted to blow him out of the water. I wanted him to know that I knew a lot. And it's time to come clean. Of course, when I said that, his eyes got big around as saucers.
You're thinking about the husband, and would the husband have a motive to do it?
He just happened to be out of town when this horrendous crime happened.
But then he opened up. He started telling me all about the affair, how long it had lasted.
Kay found out. She knew about it. We talked about it. We were going to work through it. We can never stay together and move on and move out.
And he came out and said, I cut it off, and I told Kay that it was over with.
What happened when you broke it off with Becky? How did she take it?
Well, she knew the whole time that I didn't want anything to change with my situation with Kay.
I'm not so sure that you're telling us everything at this point.
I'd also told him I was going to pull his phone records and find out who he'd been talking to and what was going on. Well, he came forward then and told me that the night before the murder that he and Becky did talk on the phone.
I called her late Monday night, I believe, and I did talk to her Tuesday. We just talked for a little while about what was going on, and then we got involved in phone sex over the phone.
And that was Tuesday night?
Yes.
So he's pretty much letting me know that the affair wasn't over with, like he told his wife.
Is it safe to say that your words were saying no as far as your relationship, and your other communications were saying something different?
Now you kind of start seeing the behind the scenes a little bit, and you start to kind of crack into the not so perfect family. So things weren't as peachy as what it seemed.
It puts them further in it, you know? They're putting themselves further and deeper into this investigation just from not telling the truth.
Detectives know he was over 2,000 miles away when his wife was killed.
I knew he couldn't have committed it. It doesn't rule out that he's involved.
The only people who can answer this question are Becky and Christopher.
We had them in different locations, and we just went ahead and talked to them at the same time. So they didn't have a chance to get their stories together. I honestly thought that once we got in there and we talked to Chris, that he would realize that he was just a patsy.
Christopher didn't say a word, didn't ask why, what for, anything. He refused to speak with us.
Your mom's in custody with us right now. She's talking to us right now. And I want you to think long and hard before you choose to go down a road. I want you to be on the right road.
Whatever you're saying, I'm trying to say is a lie. We can end this right now and go get my lawyer. I want to speak to a lawyer right now.
Becky was quite the opposite.
She agreed to talk to us, which surprised me. I didn't think she would. When we started confronting her about the affair with David, about what her brother had told us, she started coming forward.
This is the opportunity for you to be honest and truthful and to tell me what's going on in your own words.
I cared about him very, very much. And there was a time to where, yes, I thought that we would have been able to have a great relationship.
And it's been over for how long?
I can't really even say that it was ever, I mean, it was over, but we still talked. I told my husband and my husband told her.
So she knew.
She finally starts breaking down. She starts crying, and then she starts telling us it was Christopher.
I told him that I loved David, and I should have never told Christopher that, but I did. He knew I was unhappy, but I didn't tell him to kill anybody. I didn't ask him to kill anybody.
Convinced Christopher Bowers killed Kay Parsons, detectives continue to pressure his mother, Becky, on what she knows of the murder.
Her story was that Christopher knew how upset she was about David, how she wanted to be with David. But she kept saying that she didn't know he was going to do it.
I kept telling Christopher that I wanted to be with David, and I put this thought in his mind to do something.
Becky played the consummate victim the whole way.
She then makes a strange admission. On the morning of the murder, she says she picked Christopher up at 4 a.m.
She couldn't answer me why. Why did you go pick him up at 4 o'clock in the morning and bring him over there? You knew what he was going to do. And she said, well, but I didn't think he would do it.
It's a stunning revelation.
She said she received a phone call a little bit later from Christopher saying, come pick me up. She goes down there and picks him up, and he's covered in blood. She says she asked Christopher, what'd you do? He said, I took care of everything. I took care of it. She said, what did you do? And he said, I beat the out of her.
I was so scared.
She also told us about the shooting. She told us that it was Christopher that shot her. The plan was Christopher was supposed to just shoot the gun next to her so her friend could hear it. She said, yeah, he wasn't actually supposed to shoot her, which is a little poetic justice. And she said she wanted to do that so they could try to throw the investigation to try to confuse us.
They now believe that while Christopher committed the act, Becky was the mastermind.
You planted these seeds, you watered these seeds, you picked him up early in the morning so he could come over and reap that crop.
It's remarkable because it shows the degree of control she had over him and just how much, in many ways, he actually loved his mother, that he would go along with this.
We found out real quick with that interview just how conniving and manipulating that Becky actually is. I mean, 'cause she didn't care about anything other than her and her happiness and what she wanted.
Becky's statement also removes any lingering doubts over Kay's husband.
She swore up and down that David did not have any knowledge of this. He didn't know what was going to happen. He was not involved in any way.
On March 27, 2009, Becky Sears and Christopher Bowers are charged with murder.
They're charged the same because they were both equally participating in the crime.
If you're going to arrest somebody for something that didn't do it, they're going to scream and holler, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. He didn't say a word. He was calm as he could be.
The painstaking analysis of the timeline reveals exactly what happened in the last hours of Kay's life.
Kay left and took her son to school. On the way to school, they stopped and got some fast food for breakfast, and then she drove back home.
Knowing Kay is gone, Christopher stages his ambush.
When she drove back home, she opened the garage. And then as she entered through the garage door into the foyer of the house, Christopher was lying in wait and immediately began to attack her with a hammer. She tried to fight back.
She literally was fighting for her life.
We could tell by the blood evidence. She was able to make it to the garage, and we found a bloody handprint sliding down the garage door opener, trying to open the garage door.
At some point, he switches weapons.
It was just so intense. You hear of, crimes of passion. This goes beyond that.
Christopher then leaves Kay near death and begins to cover his tracks.
Chris then stages that burglary and then stages the one at Becky's house to make it kind of a cover. It was like a burglary gone bad. Maybe they won't suspect me.
And then Becky received a phone call a little bit later from Christopher saying, come pick me up. She then took Christopher to her work. Then they got the phone call from Michael about the break-in, and they drove back to the house.
Michael coming home, I think, was just a coincidence. Ultimately, we determined he was not involved.
Christopher is the one that actually killed Kay. There's no doubt in my mind he did. And there's no doubt in my mind he did it because Becky asked him to. She's the one that manipulated her son into being a monster.
I think she played on the daily routines of Kay. She knew where she was gonna be, what time, when she'd be back, and so I think that she used that to her advantage to get Christopher in the house, have a game plan, and to make it easier for him to go next door and attack her.
The district attorney decided to go after the death penalty for the charges. Chris never turned on Becky. Chris never would say a bad word about his mother. They both take a plea deal, and they both get life in prison without the possibility of parole. She is one of the most narcissistic people I've ever met in my life. She thought she could get away with it.
There is a satisfaction there because I've heard all kinds of, you know, dang man, you must be you got a crystal ball or whatever. Now, I just, you know, you get out there and you get on the trail and you just follow it. And until you get some solid answer, concrete one way or the other, you don't stop.
What length would you go to be with a person that you love? It's just a sad situation for both families. You have these children who are going to be growing up without mothers.
This type of violence inflicted, there's a certain level of depravity involved.
A brutal killing.
She's having a wonderful weekend with her family, then she's gone. Her life here on Earth was over.
I try not to think about how she died.
Bad things happen to good people, unfortunately.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
Was this a neighbor? Was it a coworker? Was it an ex-boyfriend? We weren't sure exactly what happened.
He was telling them that he was on the run and had murdered a woman in Florida.
He had a clearer view of her home. He would have known that she lived alone.
The truth will be revealed.
My gut was telling me that this was the person who murdered Bernadette Myers.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Sunshine City. That's how locals describe St. Petersburg, Florida.
I think what makes the whole area great here is the fact of the beautiful beaches that we have and the weather. You can do pretty much what you want year-round here in Pinellas County.
It's really considered a really hip and cool place to be nowadays. You get a lot of what I refer to as paradise people that come down for an easy life.
But wherever you have sunshine, you also have shadows.
The Lowman neighborhood definitely had seen its better days.
It's an area where it's not unusual to see transients moving in and out.
Here, the home of Bernadette Myers stands out.
Bernadette's home was the nicest one on the block. And she cared a lot about her home, and you could see it.
Bernadette did not show up for work that day, and Bernadette did not answer her phone and did not return any phone calls that had been previously left for her. So one of her friends decided to drive over to Bernadette's house. And she looked in through the kitchen windows, and she was able to see what to her appeared to be something red, possibly blood, on the floor in the kitchen.
Detectives Judy Vovan and Larry Nelvin arrive on scene within minutes.
We could see large amounts of blood in the kitchen. We could see the drag marks that went from the kitchen dining room area into the bedroom.
And going into the master bedroom, we found Bernadette Myers face down on the floor with a large amount of blood, dried around her head. Her hands were behind her back, duct tape around the wrist, and she had 2 large zip ties put around her neck, and they were cinched up as tight as they could possibly be. Her cause of death was the ligature strangulation. The blunt force trauma to her head was secondary to the asphyxiation. That tells you that Bernadette Myers was alive when those zip ties were put on her neck and cinched up, and when she was drugged into her room and left there.
That was certainly the first murder investigation that I worked at. The zip ties were utilized as an instrument of death. The physicality of it itself was extremely brutal.
Detectives now face the difficult task of breaking the news to loved ones.
Making a death notification to a family member is a very hard thing to do. You're trying to establish whatever you can about your victim from these people that you just shattered and shook up their life.
I remember the moment that they told us. It was just disbelief. It was just a whirlwind of not knowing what took place or what happened. The weekend before she passed away, we were all together in Ocala. It was the entire family, Sunday morning. We were all sitting around. Everybody just laughed and just joked around, and really that was the atmosphere that we had. One of the last pictures that were taken of her, she was holding her great niece and her great nephew. It's a loving moment.
It struck your heart. You know, she's there, she's having a wonderful weekend with her family, and then she's gone. Her life here on earth was over.
She had a son. She had a lot of friends and relatives that she would see on a pretty regular basis.
She was a good family member. She was a good friend.
Monday, I called her because we would always talk about the weekend, and we would laugh and joke and talk about the things that had happened. I called and left her a message. And because of the time frame, I sometimes wonder when that message was being heard.
We spoke to ex-boyfriends, we spoke to co-workers, we spoke to anyone and everyone that could lead us down the road to the killer. We weren't able to find anyone that had anything bad to say about her, or anyone certainly that had threatened her in any way.
Bad things happen to good people, unfortunately.
Determined to fill in the last 24 hours of her life, police interview Bernadette's colleague, who first spotted the blood.
Her friend was very upset, very emotional, but she provided us a lot of good information to help build a timeline. Bernadette worked at Honeywell. They work on parts for the military as well as stuff for the space program. She was an intelligent person, a hard worker. She was an early riser, got to work early, left work, and she was done for the day. We learned that on the Monday, she left work around 2:30 or 3. She had a doctor's appointment, and we know she made it there. We knew that she had a problem with one of her tires. She went to an auto parts store at around 4:30. She was there for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then she left. Sometime around 5 o'clock is most likely when she got home.
Clues from the scene suggest she met her killer moments afterwards.
There was like a bag of oranges that were out on the table. Bernadette would have put those away. I mean, that's not something she would leave out. She was very neat, which would imply that she was interrupted in whatever she did as soon as she got home.
Due to the fact that she had not returned any calls and put her groceries away or changed her clothes, we feel that she was murdered somewhere between 5 and 7 o'clock at the latest on Monday.
There was no kicked-in door, there were no screens missing, there were no broken windows. We did think perhaps that our perpetrator was someone that she knew or someone that was familiar with her home. We know that just based on the brutality at the scene, that more than likely it was going to be a man.
There was no DNA of interest found at the scene. And by that I mean they would have found, of course, Bernadette's DNA, which as you would expect.
Not one fingerprint, but one of the forensic examiners at the scene, who was still in the middle of processing, was able to develop a bloody shoe impression on the floor that they were able to enhance using chemicals. We knew it wasn't Bernadette's. Her shoes were on the kitchen floor, and she was knocked out of them. So we felt very strong that this was going to be the bloody shoe impression from the murderer.
The actual impression was believed to be some type of tennis shoe, and the size between 9 and 11.
Her vehicle was not in the garage. So of course, what I'm going to surmise from that is that whoever murdered her stole her car. Did they steal it because they wanted the car, or did they steal it because they thought it was the best way to get away from that location without being seen? It seemed pretty organized. He was either more prepared than your normal person, or he was able to react somewhat calm after he had done this to figure out how he's going to get out of there. We're looking for anybody and everybody that's associated with Bernadette, that's associated with the area, that would have any reason to be there. My first instinct was this was something that was sexually motivated.
Some of her underwear apparently had been taken out of her dresser, which could be Bernadette doing her laundry, or it could be a fetish, type sex aspect to it.
We have a sexual predator offender tracking unit here at the sheriff's office. They track all the locations of all the sex offenders and sex predators, and they're required to check in and register with them.
The investigators would automatically search the database for any persons in the area that are sexual predators. They would be persons of interest to speak to as soon as possible.
There is one name at the top of their list.
Leo Brobry was brought to our attention by the sexual predator unit. He was a convicted sexual predator who had committed a violent rape.
He lived within around a mile of Bernadette Myers. His offenses had to do with adult women.
There's some leopards out there with spots on that don't change.
So of course we wanted to look into him, try to find out where he might have been on the day that Bernadette was murdered.
The lead suspect in Bernadette Myers' homicide is a convicted sex offender.
So we wanted to find him and talk with him to try and establish a timeline.
If somebody is determined by police to have a record for sexual assault, especially if it's a record for violence and sexual assault, they are examined more thoroughly by police to see if they're capable of committing an even worse assault, and in this case, that would be murder.
Police obtain Berrubi's address from the offender tracking unit.
In my being, I knew he was a dirtbag. When we spoke to Mr. Borobi, he had recently injured himself.
He said he had suffered a broken foot previously and had to use the crutches to get around on. I think it would have been very hard for somebody that truly has to use crutches to be able to do what was done to Bernadette. But we still wanted to make every effort to make sure he wasn't just using that as a crutch. We were able to timeline his injury out by talking to his place of employment, and they were able to confirm with us that he had had this injury prior to Bernadette's murder.
He got out of work that afternoon at 3:30, and he had to wait for a ride. So as far as the timeline goes, he wouldn't have been able to make it from where he was to Bernadette's house to commit the murder because of the physical injury.
To be certain, detectives turned to the forensic evidence.
When we got the autopsy results, it was determined that there was no sexual assault to Bernadette Myers. So all of that was against Leo Berube being involved in this. We were able to rule him out as being a suspect in this homicide. Now that we knew that she was not the victim of a sexual assault, obviously the person went through something in her room and was searching for something.
Detective Nalvin and I invited Michelle and Christopher, that's Bernadette's niece and her son, to come to the house to hopefully be able to assist us. As hard as it was, we were hoping that they were going to be able to give us some key information in regards to the items that were missing, that we couldn't recognize as being missing because we had never been in that home before.
Everything had its place at Aunt Bernadette's house. Bernadette kept a very, very nice house. You could eat off her floor.
It was very emotional for them. It was extremely emotional. But they put their grief aside, and they were very focused on helping us find the killer.
At first, they really couldn't tell if anything was missing until her son said, I think that my mom had a wooden jewelry box on her dresser top.
There was several items of jewelry that she kept in that jewelry box.
Some items that they said were very unique, and that's what we kind of focused in on at that point in time.
Christopher drew pictures of the jewelry for us, but also Michelle, her niece, brought in a photograph of Bernadette from the family gathering that happened in Ocala the weekend before her murder. Bernadette was wearing a two-tone Anne Klein watch in the photograph, and it was on her wrist. And that was a watch that we did not find at the crime scene.
If you can identify property that's been stolen from a residence, it's a very valuable lead for the police because you can trace back who possessed that property to prove that the suspect was in the house.
That kind of explained potentially the undergarments that were on the bed and on the floor. We felt that the person went through the drawers looking for more jewelry or money or something of value. Her house was almost like a little bit of an oasis in the middle of this area. So people might think that this person, because they take care of their house, has money or has valuables inside of there. There's all kinds of people going by that residence all the time. It's a very heavily traveled road. So you start thinking, was somebody staking out her residence?
Investigators focus on the area surrounding Bernadette's house, looking for anything out of the ordinary.
We received a phone call from my sergeant at the time, who was out in an alley that runs behind Bernadette Myers' house. And he said he was with an individual and that we needed to come meet with them. And that's when we first encountered Lee Davey. Lee Davey happened to be walking down the alley as my sergeant was walking down the alley, and he sees Lee approaching him, holding in his hand about a 34 to 36 inch long zip tie.
Davey is also found walking in the alley at the same time of day Bernadette was killed.
So the proximity is there, he's got the zip tie, and he certainly looks like he would be a strong enough individual that could have exerted the amount of violence on Bernadette.
He was a person of interest to us, a very strong person of interest.
In my mind, I'm thinking, this could be our killer.
Detectives have identified a man named Lee Davey, found carrying zip ties near Bernadette Meyer's house.
Of course, he knows who she is because he sits at the bus stop across from her house. He lives across the street. He walks the alley.
So, of course, we're assessing him. We're looking at his feet. Does he wear the same size tennis shoes? His mannerism? Is he perspiring?
He brought us over to his apartment that he lived in, let us search through his whole entire apartment, let us look at all his shoes.
He actually was cooperative with us. But sometimes that's not unusual because sometimes the bad guys think they're going to outsmart you.
Lee claims to have been at work in the time frame Bernadette was killed.
People will lie. Very, very dangerous to accept at face value that what you're being told is entirely the truth. Your job is to take the information, try to corroborate what you're being told.
He didn't have a violent history, so there was no motive there.
His shoe size was smaller than that we were looking for that the killer had left behind.
And there was nothing that tied him to Bernadette.
His alibi also checks out.
The zip tie, he indicates that he found it near the bus station down in St. Pete, which is a distance away, and he grabbed it and just walked home with it. So for his case, I think it's a matter of timing. Bad timing for him to be walking down the alley carrying a zip tie.
When you have a person of interest that you believe could have committed this crime, you are putting all your efforts into that. And then once it gets to the point that you are able to confirm that this person, in fact, was not the killer, it's a little disappointing. But that's the truth of it. Word had spread in the neighborhood because of the crime scene tape being there. Word had spread at her job. So people were calling in as well and giving us information, giving us leads. There was a phone call from a woman named Sunshine. Sunshine was very well known in the law enforcement community in the Lellman area. She was very familiar with the streets because at times she lived on them. She had had some run-ins with the law herself. So we certainly knew exactly who she was. And she called in and provided us some information that she'd seen a black male in the alley right before the time of Bernadette's death.
She also said she saw the same person run through Bernadette's yard and then saw that person at a convenience store down the street later. So we went out and met with that convenience store. But there's no surveillance footage because their equipment's not working.
They were panning for gold there, just, sifting through everything, trying to figure out where's this going to take us. When you really have nothing, you're just searching, one of the things you'd say, well, is anybody doing burglaries around that time frame? You start looking for any creep-in burglaries or people are at home, because the vast majority of home burglaries, there's nobody at home. And burglars don't want to break into people's houses when people are there.
It led us to Curtis Bryant.
He became a person of interest because, that was kind of his MO, going to people's houses in that area and breaking in while they were there.
Bryant's description matches that of the man seen by Sunshine near Bernadette's house.
In the process of finding Curtis Bryant, he was arrested on a burglary charge.
He broke into a residence while somebody was home, and it happened to be a female, an adult female, in close proximity to Bernadette's residence, within 8 blocks, and they were also in a stolen car.
So when Detective Nalvin and I had the opportunity to interview him about Bernadette's death, he was actually in custody. Unfortunately, that day, Mr. Bryant lacked a moral compass.
He listened to us talk, But he refused to answer specific questions, and at one point he ended up telling us he didn't want to talk anymore.
Well, if I'm his lawyer, the first thing I tell him to do is, you do not talk to the police, ever. And if you do, you're an idiot. Because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
They search Bryant's house, hoping to uncover evidence linking him to Bernadette's murder.
He lived in a little room inside of a garage and paid rent there. And we searched around in the garage.
We were looking for anything that may have been taken from the murder scene or brought to the murder scene.
We found duct tape. We found some decent length zip ties, pretty close to the length of the ones that we had on Bernadette Myers. However, the zip ties was a different manufacturer. The duct tape had a different grain and texture to it. We collected his shoes. His shoe size did not appear to fit with the size of the impression that we had. Nothing was tying him to her. Nothing was tying him to the scene.
Bryant looks set to be ruled out when police make an important discovery.
When we found Bernadette's car, it was at a local auto parts store right around the corner from Bernadette's. That was somewhat exciting to hear, finding the car where it was in such close proximity. It kind of supported the theory that we had that the person got in the car to get away from her residence without being seen.
They look for physical evidence that places him in the vehicle.
We were hoping we'd get lucky and get DNA from the suspect. We had it towed back to our forensic lab, and it was processed. They were able to recover blood from the top of the steering wheel, from the gear shifter. They recovered it from the armrest. We had it submitted to the crime lab in hopes of it belonging to the suspect. However, all of that came back to Bernadette Myers. It's very deflating every time you're sending something off that you feel has a good potential of having DNA associated to the suspect, and it's coming back to your victim.
Their final hope in connecting Bryant to Bernadette lies with the timeline.
At that point in time, when Bernadette was murdered, Curtis worked for a seawall construction company, and we were able to get in touch with his boss. We were able to confirm that he was at work and what time they worked till that day, which would have made it impossible for him to make it from where he was to Bernadette's for that.
Detectives now worry about the case growing cold.
Morale was kind of stretched, but you keep pushing ahead. You know, you have a victim that you want to find justice for her, and you have family members.
I mostly remember how I always felt they were going to catch the person that did this. I really, really felt strongly that they were going to do that. I don't think they turned it off ever. I think that they carried the weight of this case until it was done. So we were able to really put our grief aside and put all our faith in them.
Convinced Bernadette's murder was a well-planned crime of opportunity, police broadened their neighborhood search, determined to identify anything unusual from her final 24 hours.
In Bernadette's case, what made it unique and somewhat difficult was the fact that it was a transient area. It's a lot of people coming and going. We went back out again to do some more canvassing, and there was a decent-sized auto dealership right at the end of Bernadette Street. We talked to an employee, and she had some very good information for us. Going back to Monday, the day that we know Bernadette was murdered, she was parked across the street on the north side of the road, and at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she saw an individual standing next to a van that was parked next to her car. 30-year-old white male, 5'10", brown hair. She got in her car and she left. She came back about 45 minutes later. And when she came back, the van was still there.
And the interesting thing is that how he was parked, if he looked down the street, he could see Bernadette's home.
It was in direct sight of Bernadette's residence, with the front door and the driveway and most of her yard. I thought, great, maybe this person was looking that direction and could remember seeing something happen at Bernadette's residence. The individual was now seated inside the van, and as she got out, he made a comment to her without her even saying a word to him. "I'm waiting to meet somebody." He volunteers that to her, which she thought was kind of weird. And she goes into work. And about 15 minutes later, which would now be about 5 o'clock, she goes to leave for the day. He's still there. I asked her if there's anything that stood out about the van, and she remembered that it had a magnet on the side of the van from a local painting company.
This was something certainly that we had to follow up on. Who was he? Was there a line from him to Bernadette? Was this someone that Bernadette knew? Because of the business name on the side of the van, we knew where we were going to go next. And we were going to find out who was this person in this van.
Investigators on the Bernadette Myers case worked to track down a mystery man seen outside her home on the day of the murder.
So we went and found the owner of the painting company. And the owner is very good friends of Bernadette Myers. So that struck a chord. He informed us that he himself had painted the inside her residence about 4 years prior. And then 3 years ago, the outside of her residence was painted by two of his workers, one of them who was currently incarcerated in prison, and the other one was named Charles Hall.
Detectives bring Halm in for an interview.
He told me and confirmed that he did paint her house 3-4 years ago, as he remembered it. Said it took about a week to paint it. He kind of alluded that they were kind of friendly when he painted her house, that she would leave her doors unlocked so they could use the restroom. So I asked him if he had been by there recently. And he said no. And I said, well, you sure? Sure you wouldn't have been somewhere around there to meet somebody? And he kind of said, oh, yeah, I was. He kind of committed to parking in the same area that he was observed in.
He reluctantly admitted that he was there, knowing that there was probably a witness that saw him there.
I asked him for his help to see if he saw anybody over there, and he said, yeah, I could see right to her house, but no, I didn't see anybody. He was thinking out loud at this point to himself, who was I there to meet? Who was it? And he was looking up into the ceiling and looking left and looking right, and he kind of just looked over at us and said, I don't know, beats me. I can't remember who it was. He parked in a spot, for an hour and waited to meet somebody, but can't remember who he was going to meet. I didn't believe him.
We did notice during the course of the interview that Mr. Halm's shoe size looked like it could have been the shoe size that we were looking for, but there was no real evidence to hold him.
At that point in time, I'd gotten information from him that I could follow up on, and I sent him on his way, and asking him to call me when he thinks of who this person, alleged person, was that he was supposed to meet. We put our surveillance team on him to establish where he's going and coming and who he's associating with so we could start talking to them.
When you're a seasoned investigator and you have to allow them to go, it's gut-wrenching. Not everyone can work homicide. It's very demanding, and it can be incredibly stressful. You have to be able to shift gears very quickly, and you have to have a really strong belief in the law and in justice.
As they begin the follow-up on Halm, the investigation takes a bizarre turn.
There was bulletins that were put out about the circumstances of her death to other law enforcement agencies.
We get a call from Alma Police Department in Arkansas about an individual who they called a hitchhiker that had been dropped off by some people because he was telling them that he was on the run and had murdered a woman in Florida. When law enforcement in Arkansas had contact with him, in going through the stuff, he had some zip ties.
It's a coincidence they can't ignore. So they work towards linking the man to Bernadette.
By going through all these different reports and different associates surrounding this individual, we are able to see at one point in time that a girlfriend of his that lived almost on the same block as Bernadette Myers.
They discover an incident report revealing the hitchhiker had a violent past.
He had been involved in a shooting and kidnapping, so to speak, with an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife. So you see that there's a violent tendency from this unstable person. And then you have the fact that he's saying he murdered a woman in Florida. We are doing everything we can to try and establish where he's been for this time, because he wasn't with the people that he was hitchhiking with anymore, and law enforcement had already sent him on his way, and now he was in the wind. It was very frustrating.
They worked to place their new suspect in Bernadette's neighborhood at the time she was killed.
If you can get the timeline right, you can prove or break the suspect's alibi.
We found evidence he was in some facility in Tennessee during the time frame of Bernadette's murder. There was nothing put in him in this area recently. As this investigation went on, it seemed that everybody we came into contact with now all of a sudden is either carrying a zip tie or has them in their garage. None of them were the size of the ones that we found on Bernadette. You want tips to come in, but it depends. Sometimes you get a lot that don't lead you anywhere. Some are good, but you can't pick and choose which ones you get, so you have to work all of them.
The investigation gains new traction when the surveillance team makes an important discovery about painter Charles Hom.
We learned that he was a frequent pawner. A lot of his pawn activity was tools and construction equipment, things of that nature. In Florida, when you pawn anything, you're required to, 1, provide a photo ID, and 2, you're required to provide a thumbprint. If we have any suspicion that could have been a robbery or burglary, you're going to look for somebody pawning this stuff to get the money for it.
Detective Nelvin checks Holmes' most recent pawn activity.
After Bernadette Myers' murder, he pawned some women's jewelry.
We traveled to the pawn shops. And based on the drawings by Christopher, we were able to determine that there were several items pawned by Mr. Hom that belonged to Bernadette. These items were sent to the lab for a DNA test.
On the pink coral ring was our one piece of DNA evidence that belonged to Bernadette Myers, which proved that that was her ring. And the concerning part about it is that we're finding that in one particular transaction, he was pawning this before we'd even found her body inside her house on Tuesday.
That was a true breaking point.
With the circumstantial evidence mounting against Charles Hom, detectives are able to subpoena more of his records from the day of the murder.
We got his phone records, and we were able to see what I would describe as a frantic attempt to get a hold of a friend of his named Gary.
It shows a flurry of phone calls, like I think it's 6:20 or 6:22 that evening.
The calls fall right within the time frame of Bernadette's murder, making Gary their next priority.
Gary told us that he was friends with Charles Hom, and he also told us that he had gotten some jewelry from Charles. He also told us that his wife had some of the jewelry. So at that point in time, we go find his wife, Kimber. As I looked at the watch that she's wearing on her wrist, immediately flashed this picture that the family had provided to me of when Bernadette was in Ocala one day before she was murdered.
She was actually wearing Bernadette's watch. There's a part of me that thought that, there was some divine intervention happening there. That's one of those moments that you pray for.
I think the stars just aligned with us having the weekend together, and it was just such a beautiful weekend, but that we had the picture of the watch.
As Charles Holm is charged with first-degree murder, detectives can now identify the critical details from Bernadette's final 24 hours and the events that drew her ever closer to a desperate killer.
The day before, Bernadette had been with her son visiting some relatives in Ocala.
Bernadette came home Sunday evening. She went to work on Monday.
She stopped a couple places on her way home for errands.
Charles Holm sat in his van for an hour waiting for her to get home. He knows that she has a nice house. He knows where she works, so he knows that she's more well off than most people in that area.
Now, whether when he was watching her house, his plan was to kill her, it's possible. He was doing a lot of drugs at that time. Heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine.
She went home that night expecting to have a quiet evening. She put her things down, and Mr. Holm was at the back door. And she probably answered it. She was a friendly person. And she recognized him.
And he probably thought he might be able to smooth talk her into getting some money. But she will tell people her mind. Probably told him to pack sand. He was upset. That's when he attacks her.
He repeatedly struck her in the back of the head with some type of blunt weapon. And he continued to strike her until she went down. To make sure that she was not going to be on this earth any longer, then he took zip ties and he put them around her neck and used those zip ties to drag her body from the kitchen area into her bedroom, where he left her face down with her head in a pool of blood.
He was panicked at some point because he was trying to reach out to his friend Gary at that point in time, frantically. He then used the idea of going through her garage to get in her car to leave without being seen, to go park down the street, to be able to walk back to his van that he was in, and then drive away. Then, the following day, Charles Holm pawned jewelry that belonged to Bernadette Myers 3 hours before we found her. Finding the pawn transaction that's done before her body's found with the jewelry that we know is hers, and then finding this watch that she was wearing not even 24 hours before she was murdered, to me was a huge moment.
He probably looked at it as she could be an easy target as far as that goes. And so in that regard, it's not random. It's random from the standpoint that she did nothing to encourage this. And that's the scary part. There truly are evil people out there that prey on innocent folks.
Ultimately, Charles Holm was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Bernadette Myers. He's serving life with no chance of parole. You're talking about a couple $100 ultimately. A couple highs is what he got out of this. Murdered her brutally. To think about somebody going through that in the last minutes of their life is always stuck in my memory. Being able to put Charles Holm in prison for the rest of his life was very satisfying.
There's parts of every homicide that you always have with you. The part about this case, about Bernadette Myers' death and her murder that stuck with me the most was the courage of her family, even at their time of grief, to help us with the investigation. Without their help, we wouldn't have been able to go forward.
I try not to think about how she died. I like to think about how she lived. Bernadette was so funny, and we laughed all the time. She was our aunt, she was a sister, she was a best friend. Sunday morning, we were all just sitting there visiting. And Bernadette was sitting next to me. And she looked me right in the eyes and told me why she loved me. It doesn't get any better than that.